vaguely familiar to us from long ago. But appreciate just being with you, and just this is such an encouraging church. People who love the Lord, people who want to just continue to learn about the Lord and share with one another. So this is just such a vibrant church in that way. It really encourages us and energizes us while we're here, and then when we go back, it's really good. So just thank you. Thank you for taking away from your groups that you normally meet during Sunday school to come together and just have something a bit different. And I thought just this morning that would give you news of what's happening in South Africa, specifically as it relates to the ministry there. I've got a very brief PowerPoint presentation with some other pictures, and maybe I'll search in here for some other pictures just to show you and to talk through in that. But we're at Christ Seminary. For those of you who might have just come into Cornerstone Church over the last couple of years, we are missionaries to South Africa, Polokwane, South Africa. And Polokwane is about 3 hours north of Johannesburg. So if you want to get one of those globes or a map and you look at Africa, then you go all the way to the bottom. South Africa is the southernmost country in Africa. And Johannesburg is kind of north central. It's the capital, really, of the country, biggest city. And it's very modern, very much like Chicago. You wouldn't think you're in Africa when you're in Johannesburg. And then we're about 3 hours north, which is pretty much like driving through New Mexico or Texas to get where we are. And it's a town of about maybe 80 to 100,000 people, but with townships on both sides of it that would put the population close to 1 million. So that's how many people are living in townships. In townships, it's difficult to describe, but it's a place where the African population, the black African population, typically would exist in townships. Some of it's from history and whatnot. That's where they live, and they're there, and it's probably, it's anywhere 300,000 to 500,000 on one side, 300,000 to 500,000 on the other side, and about 100,000 in the city itself, where the downtown is and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a very big place other than in the township areas, which is very common in South Africa. Every city is going to have townships that are very right next door and nearby and that kind of thing. And so we're not quite like in the downtown city of Chicago and Johannesburg. So we're more out in rural Africa. As I say, it's not real Africa, but you can see it from there, where we are. So we're real close to see real Africa. If you kind of stand up on a ladder, you can see it's just right out there. We're about 150 kilometers, which a little over 100 miles from Kruger National Park, which is the largest animal reserve in the world, I believe. And it's definitely, once you enter Kruger National Park, you're in National Geographic. I mean, you're there. It's no telling what's going to come out of the bush or the weeds or anything else. And so we're pretty close to there. We're pretty close to Zimbabwe and Mozambique, which borders our east and our north sections of the country. And you might have heard some things about Zimbabwe. And we're going to talk about Zimbabwe here in a moment. I don't know, has anybody heard anything in the news on Zimbabwe at all? One. That's good. Just so you know, Zimbabwe used to be the breadbasket of Africa as a country. I don't have a map exactly for it here right now unless I start searching, and I don't want to upset the tech thing right now. We've just got it balanced right now where we need it. But it used to be what's called the breadbasket of Southern Africa because it fed all the countries in Southern Africa. And in the late 1970s, the exchange rate was $3 to $1 Zimbabwe dollar. So it was pretty strong. It took $3 to buy one Zimbabwe dollar. And I'm going to show it to you here. I have right here, it's kind of tattered a little bit, but I have right here a $1 billion Zimbabwe note. Literally, $1 billion, Central Reserve Bank, Zimbabwe. You could not buy dirt with this. And at the time, this is about 2008, if you had a wheelbarrow filled with these billion-dollar notes, someone would come and rob you and dump the wheelbarrow and take the wheelbarrow and leave the money, because it really couldn't buy anything. The exchange rate, now remember I said it's $3 US to $1 Zimbabwe dollar. I know sometimes for some of us math is challenging and all that, but the exchange rate in 2008 grew to 24 quadrillion to 1. If you get your arms around that number. I know in the US economy there's always these talks in the news about trillions of dollars to pay for this and trillions of dollars to pay for that. A trillion is a drop compared to a quadrillion. And that's what the exchange rate was in Zimbabwe. That's how fast chaos can erupt in Africa. And they've totally lost their currency. There is no currency there anymore. Literally, there's no money. They don't have a way they trade. So they actually have these little Chuck E. Cheese tokens that they use. Believe it or not, I use Chuck E. Cheese as a metaphor. It's not really Chuck E. Cheese, but they have these Zimbabwe tokens if you want to have commerce in Zimbabwe. Otherwise, they'll take your dollars or maybe even your rands to use. And they've got a new government. They just had a coup last year, and the president, who was 93 years old, his own party, the army, eventually pushed him out in kind of a bloodless coup, and they're trying to sort out what's happening. But even with a country as chaotic and all that where they are, they pushed the gasoline prices to the highest in the world. It's between $16 and $18 a gallon in Zimbabwe now, with a country with no currency, no food, no jobs, and that. So that's our neighboring country where we are. And why that's important, I'm going to explain here in a moment, but that's just what is nearby. In Mozambique, which is also next to us, where we planted about 12 to 15 churches through what's called Samaria Mission, which is an arm of the local church. That country has been in civil war for probably 20 some odd years, maybe close to 30 years. And it died down in the late 2000s, but there's a group kind of in the middle of the country that's not giving up, and so it's not real safe driving around through the country. But we are on the western edge of Mozambique, where we planted a lot of churches up and down the river. And in that area of Mozambique and Zimbabwe, I'm going to share with you what we've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years through the Ministry of Christ Seminary in South Africa. Now, Christ Seminary is a place where we train pastors. So I've got some slides here. This is a typical classroom. And we teach just like you would right here at Cornerstone Church. And we're all wired up, so the guys have their laptops, and we teach just like we do here with tech and try to display. And we offer a bachelor's degree of theology as well as a diploma of theology. The diplomas in the South African education system is just one level below a degree, but it's still considered a qualification. So if you think of like numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8, I've got a level 5, level 6, level 7, level 8. A level 6 is a diploma. A level 4 is high school. Level 5 is certificate. I think we have some of those here in the States. So you have high school level 4, certificate level 5, diploma level 6, bachelor's level 7, honors level 8, master's level 9. That's kind of how it goes. So we offer a level 6 and level 7 education of diploma and bachelor's in classes here. And it's an accredited system, meaning the government has come in and audited and gone through all the processes that you go through to have a regular school. And we are registered with the government of South Africa as a university in South Africa. So Christ Seminary is a registered university in South Africa. And this is what Cornerstone is involved with right here. The classrooms are in our church. So this is part of our church. This would be like one of our Sunday school classrooms that we use. But during the week, this is what's happening. So you've got a group of men from years 1, it's still 1 to 4. It's a 4-year program that's eventually phasing to a 3-year program, but all the guys are there and going through all the classes you'd go through if you were for example, a Bible major at Wheaton or Master's College or Cedarville or any of those kinds of places, it's equivalent to that. And we've actually had American students come there and get their degree from Christ Seminary and then come back here, and they either serve in a church or they're going on to get their Master's of Divinity, that kind of thing. So it's not just a church-based training thing that we're talking about here. We're actually talking about a university that is equivalent to the Bible schools, the Bible colleges that are in the States. The difference is it's not a liberal arts college, so you don't get history and you don't get science and astronomy and all those fun credits that the kids always want to go take. It's 100% seminary classes, so it's 100% Bible. There's not a class that's not related to Bible or its application, exegesis, understanding Greek, Hebrew, all of that. So these are our classrooms, kind of going through that. You'll see it, and the guys are there. And we've got everything on the web, everything on our servers. It's just like you would pretty much go into a university here. And interactive classes, they come for 9 days a month. So they arrive on a Tuesday. Actually, they arrive on a Monday, because most of these guys are pastors or in some kind of church somewhere, so we want them to get done with their Sunday. And one of the biggest obstacles in Africa is transportation. If you want to think of what the issues are. The issue in South Africa is transportation, because these guys probably don't have cars, most of them. Or if they do, then they stack 12 guys in a car, and then they'll come. And so they arrive on a Monday, stay Monday night, and then Tuesday we begin classes at 7 a.m., and classes go from 7 a.m. till 1:30. We give them a half hour for breakfast, and they get lunch after 1:30. We feed them breakfast, we feed them lunch, and we feed them dinner, because when they come in, they stay in the hostels. So we have 44 beds that they come and are able to stay in. But classes begin at 7, so you have class from 7 to 8, then 8 to 9, and then breakfast 9 to 9:30, and then 9:30 to 10:30, and so on. And that is class. They have 8 days of class straight. So they show up on a Tuesday, they have class on a Wednesday, we have chapel on a Thursday, so there's no class on Thursday, class on a Friday. The weekend, they're in church, just like being here at Cornerstone. They have to come to our church and participate in our church services. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's class, and then they go home. And that'd be for the first and third year students. Then the next week, on Monday night, here comes the second and fourth year students. So we alternate between first and third and second and fourth, and they come in. So we have 2 classrooms just like this. And the first years will be in one class, and the third years will be in another class, and they just go like that. And so they'll do that for 5 sessions. So basically every month there's 9 days of intensive class. And then they go back to their home, their village, their city, wherever they're at, and they do the homework, they do all the things you would have to normally do. We load them up, and then they go home, and that's where they practically apply what they've been learning, and they have to fill out all their assignments as well, and then they come back essentially 21 days later to do it again. And they do that for 4 months, and then the 5th month they come back for final exams. So when they have final exams, then the semester's over. And it's essentially the same amount of lecture hours that you would get if you were to take 3-hour courses at a university here. It's the same amount of lecture time that it all adds up to. It's just compressed every month is what we do. And so this is where we are. This is our library here. Okay, this is one row of our library. Okay, this is not our library. So we actually have a room, a pretty good size, and we've got 13,000 volumes right now. So we've got 6 or 7 rows just like this that we've been investing in and getting every type of research tool, systematic theology, biblical commentary, that kind of thing. And to keep our accreditation up, we have to keep our library at the standard of a university. And so right now we just received our accreditation for our new bachelor program that's coming, and they liked everything. They said our library's a little dated. For some reason, they don't like old dead guys. They like new things. And so they say our books we need to start populating it with newer works that are coming. And it's tough because in South Africa, there's no publishers, so you don't have books available. So you get whatever the latest whatever's at the kind of the Christian bookstores you can get. And so you have to kind of put up with Joel Osteen and the other guys that are there as well, hoping to find some books that we can use. And so we try to get things to be able to populate in here. And we've been able to do this over the last 5 years or so. We really significantly added to our library that got us to where we need to be. And our next challenge is going to be to go from where we are to offer what's called an honors program. If you want to think of honors, think of it as like, it's like in between a fourth year of university and a first year of a master's program. And it's common in the British system that they've put, the European education system. There's a degree, it's a 1-year degree, it's called an honors degree, but it's fully research, so meaning you have to write a thesis and you have to do things that a postgraduate person would do. And we're looking to apply to that. And to do that, we're going to need to get a library that is proven to be able to handle the research needed for students to come. And we have to have our faculty at a level that can teach at the honors, meaning they can't just be bachelor's level people. And so right now, almost all of our lectures are at the doctorate level. I think it was last year, you had Joseph McLaughlin here, is that right? I'm pretty sure we had him here. Joseph's been here, I think, at least once, maybe twice. And he's right now finishing his doctoral program at Southern University, Southern Seminary in Kentucky. So he's finishing that up. And so our lectures are going to be at the doctoral level, and we have a facility that's able to handle this. We got lectures that are all there. Now we're getting a library up here to do this, and we're going to need to strengthen our library to be able to handle guys who are not just coming out of high school anymore, but they've actually been out there and they're coming. And so that's meeting the requirements of the state, and it's enabling us to really have something that pastors can come in and use these resources. We also have a lot of computers and Bible software that we use. Some of you might be familiar with the program Logos. I think we have 6 or 7 copies of Logos with all their books and everything associated, so our students can get electronic sources as well, access to journals, all those kinds of things. I know I'm just kind of giving you the technical overview, but it's helpful, I think, for you to see what we have as an infrastructure there. And that's our librarian, Antoinette. I think she's like 82 or 83, but she's very diligent, and don't mess with her and don't take a book outside of the room if you've not logged in appropriately. Yeah, she is quite diligent for that. So Antoinette is wonderful. This is typical of our Shepherd's Conference. We have classrooms, but we have a Shepherd's Conference at our church and at our seminary every year. We have speakers come from the States that often they're from the States, sometimes they might be from South Africa, that come in, and we're one of the 3 sites that they host a conference there. Once in Johannesburg, once in Polokwane, and then one is in Cape Town. You always got to take it to Cape Town so the speakers can see Table Mountain and all the things, because Cape Town is not really South Africa, it's Southern Europe. So they like to get that kind of a deal. But out where we are in Polokwane, where the students are, you can see we've got a whole bunch of students and pastors from the area come in to the Shepherd's Conference. It's really a 3-day conference, which involves all the things of meals, and we feed them and all that. And so we tend to have this kind of a fellowship activity that takes place. And just to let you know this, because this is the one picture we have of people doing this, we do this kind of a thing right here at our church on Sunday nights. We don't fight the snow, so it's easier, I think, for us. But on Sunday nights, what we do is we've started our church service at 5:30, so 5:30. And we opted to go for a little bit of a shorter service, so we only go for 1 hour. Our Sunday morning service is a little bit longer. It goes for about 1 hour and 45 minutes. And so it's more of a fuller session. But on Sunday nights, we go from 5:30 to 6:30 and try to go for more of a targeted application sermon that really hits maybe what was taught on Sunday morning, or there might be a particular series, and it gives the guys, because we've got a lot of preachers at the church to be able to preach. And then we have a meal afterwards. So one of our small groups, one of our home Bible study groups, prepares some kind of a light meal like soup or some kind of sandwich thing, and we have a fellowship afterwards, because we're trying to teach the people. I mean, there's a difference between fellowship and socialization. And I think we need to understand this, and churches need to understand it. Now, in our environment, it's a little more important because we have such a mixed group of people, meaning we have people that speak different languages everywhere. We'll have 8, 9, 10 languages in the church. And believe it or not, even the white folks speak different languages to each other. So it's not just the black folks that have tribal languages, that kind of thing. So cultures are very different. Backgrounds are very different. Your preferences of things are very different. And so there's socialization, and you don't want to tell people you got to mix socially when that's difficult because you didn't grow up like these people. Where do you start? I mean, how do you do that? And so socialization is what people naturally do, but fellowship in a church is very different because fellowship is based on our identity in Christ. It's based on our commonality of who we are despite our differences. So if you read Acts chapter 2 about the first folks that got saved and what did they do, they had to fellowship because they couldn't socialize. I mean, you read Acts 2, you got Jews from all over the map, all speaking different languages. When the Holy Spirit came and they spoke in tongues and all of that stuff started happening, you got people from everywhere. And then all of a sudden they get saved and they meet together. I mean, what are they going to do and what are they going to talk about? I mean, one's from Libya and one's from, here and there. And what do you know? What they talked about is their identity in Christ and what's going on in the church. And that's what our meal does for us. It causes us to then be able to discuss what we just worshiped, what we just went through, and what's going on in your life spiritually. How can we help? How can we pray for you? All those kinds of things. And that's what unites Jews and Gentiles. That's what unites people that are different, is fellowship. Giving them the freedom to socialize whenever they want to socialize. And, the soccer guys get together with soccer guys, the rugby guys get together with the rugby guys, and that's kind of how it works. And that's fine. But it's real important to emphasize fellowship. I just can't tell you and how much we feel, Karen and I feel from this church. There's such a sense of fellowship here. You guys do that so well. It is really, really encouraging. And we're trying to do that where we are as well, because that's what's going to unite a country that is having a lot of division issues. And just to diverge for a moment, I told you about Zimbabwe, and it was helpful to get that footnote in so you can see what is going on where we're actually investing. But South Africa itself also has lots of issues, lots of problems. It's got a history that's very difficult. From the apartheid government from 1948 to 1994. And all of a sudden there was a lot of geopolitical pressure put on. And at the time, from 1948 to 1994, only one segment of the population could vote. So it's literally, if you said, you're from one party, only that party can vote, kind of thing. And so only one group of people could vote. So the Africans that were all there, which was 90% of the country, couldn't vote. So naturally you had the one group in power, and that changed in 94 to where they said now one person, one vote, everybody votes. So it was a big, massive shift. So you had a complete new government, radical government, moved in 1994. And that's created a whole different set of pressures, because when you had one group that was pretty much oppressed, they're now in charge. It's not based on any kind of Judeo-Christian principles at all, trained under communism coming in. Now that's what's coming. And so you have a lot of more tribal mentality that's running the country, but having an economy like, California, trying to run this thing. And it creates lots of tension. That's been going on. Crime is everywhere because security has completely changed and how it all works. And that's been going on for 20 years, 30 years. And most recently, you might have heard a little bit in the news that there is some talk in South Africa about how the government now, they want to change the constitution so that the government has the power to take anybody's property without any compensation. So Today, the laws are like eminent domain of the United States, meaning if we want to put a Walmart here, we're just going to make you sell your house. That's just what's going to happen. And that's what happens here in the States, and it happens there in South Africa. If the government want to take your farm because of interest that the government has, they'll do that, but they'll pay you for it. And then they kick you off and you go, but they bought your farm. And they're changing that now to, or there's talk, how that all works, of saying the government can now just come confiscate your farm and tell you to leave, and you can't do anything about it. And that's in the wings right now because of political maneuvering and what's happening, because that's what happened in Zimbabwe, and everything collapsed there. And so there's a fear that South Africa is going to go the way of Zimbabwe to a degree. So you can imagine it's related to the government that's currently in control, and they're going to target a very specific group in the population. And that's what's happening in South Africa. Now, given all that, what does the church do? The church needs to be the church regardless of what's going on out there. And the church needs fellowship. The church says, we don't care what the government's going to do. We don't take sides, and we don't bring those things into the church because it has nothing to do with us. And it becomes more like what you read in the book of Hebrews, trying to say, hey, guys, don't worry about how you're suffering. You haven't yet suffered to the point of shedding blood. Let's keep going. Let's come together, and let's defend each other like family. That's what the church does, and stands out to the world. Especially a multi-ethnic church like what we have stands out to South Africa when people stand in unity against what's going on in Facebook 7 days a week and talk radio 6-7 days a week and all of that. It's this kind of thing. And so I wanted to just keep having you see this picture of fellowship that's happening. That is us. That's what we do that's there. This is our faculty. There are 7 of us. And right there, the one standing next to me, Charlie Ramfamedzi. He's actually here in the States. He'll be in California where we are, but he's currently coming. He spent time in Tennessee, and now he's in Illinois. Actually, this Sunday he's in Illinois, and he's going to be going to L.A. But Charlie was a graduate of Christ Seminary, year 2000. As a matter of fact, everybody there is a graduate except for myself. I don't have my little pointer. Myself, Johan Udendal, who is standing to the right, and Andrew Izieho, who's farthest on the right. He's from Kenya. Those are 3 that we're the 3 that not, but the other 4 are actually graduates of Christ Seminary that are now teaching at Christ Seminary and pursuing their doctorate degrees. And so we've been there some 20 years, and this is us there. This was a group of graduates that we had. Went to a conference in the year 2016. And notice everybody's got the same jacket because we gave everybody a jacket. We'd like to have a little brand recognition in that. And we invited all the graduates and their wives to come in for a conference. Brought a speaker from America, came, and it was very, very encouraging. What's happening now is we actually have churches that are saying we need to have our men trained, so we need Christ Seminary, which is really how a seminary should function. You don't put a seminary there first and say, let's train men to go plant churches. That doesn't work. Everything is based out of a church. You got to have a church first. A church there that's growing people. You're preaching the word. People grow up in the word. And then they say, where do I get trained? Now you need a school because you have a church. Well, when we first started, we had one church. That was our church because that's the only church that wanted to train men. Now we have probably 50 churches that are saying, where do we train men? So these men here are sending their men to Christ Seminary. And that's how it's running and going. And it takes a lot of effort to make that happen, but it is now happening and it's moving. Now, secondly, there's something called Chief Shepherd Bible School. You might not be aware of this. This is a school in Zimbabwe. One of our graduates, Simon Virago, started a school. He was so impressed with the education he got from Christ Seminary that he said, we need to do this in Zimbabwe. We've got nothing like this in Zimbabwe. So I want to do this. And we'll start it in my village, out of my church, and we're going to start training men. Can you guys work with us? I said, absolutely, we can. And so it started with his church right there, Chikumbedzi Baptist Church. It's in Chikumbedzi, which is on the western border of Zimbabwe. It borders Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And that's his humble church there. And that's them constructing the classrooms brick by brick, making this happen. They get their own bricks and make their own materials and go, and they're putting that together. And so that's actually making what it's going to take to have them. And now we are starting here. I know it looks austere here, but that's inside, and that's getting started with that. I've got a few more pictures to show you, but this is now what is inside. This is what's there today. So we've got a whiteboard in the back, you can see. We've got some desks and some chairs and some guys there. And teaching them, we've got 11 students, teaching them all the things you would teach at Christ Seminary, all the things you teach in a Bible college here. They have a systematic theology book from John MacArthur and Dick Mayhew that we gave them. They've got study Bibles. They take hermeneutics. They take survey classes. They get to know their Bible. These are pastors in Zimbabwe who are saying, I need to get trained. And I know it looks like you got 3 guys this year, but we have, like I said, we have 11 students. There's the student body. The man on the far right there, that'd be, yeah, your far right, William Vaughn. He was our mission director at Christ Baptist Church that really was running Samaria Mission. I don't know if is anybody familiar with what Samaria Mission is at our church? Nobody? Our church is, there it is, Christ Baptist Church, and under that church we have 2 arms. One is Christ Seminary, which is where I teach. We're teaching the men, you've been seeing them. But another one's called Samaria Mission. They focus on going into the bush, the real Africa places. And we've planted about 12 real churches there with elders and pastors and that kind of thing going on. And William was running that, directing that. And one of the things Samaria Mission did was focused on from June to May, we would take American short-term teams to go out into the bush and just have them experience evangelizing and working with the churches that are there and that kind of thing. And they focused on rural areas. Well, because of William and him going out with short-term teams and going out himself, he pushed out way further northeast than we've ever been, and he met Simon Virago, a village that's never been reached, at least by us, going in there, and found this pastor there. Got to talk to him, says, well, we need to get you trained. He said, I'm all for it. So Samaria Mission then supported Simon to leave Chickambedzi and come to Christ Seminary for 4 years. And he got trained. Now, he was already a pastor. He was already preaching the Word of God. But when we talk about training, it's not like he didn't know the Bible. No, he knew the Bible. You'd be so shocked to see how well these people know their Bibles. Marked up like, it's like, whoa, asking questions that, whoa, okay, that was a very difficult question. Yeah, no, they're dealing with that. But they've never had somebody take the time to sit down and show them systematically how to actually increase your understanding and shepherding and biblical counseling, those kinds of things. So we took Simon, trained him for 4 years, and he said, okay, this is amazing. This is what is needed where we're at. He took the initiative to say, I'm going to do this. Would you guys help me? We did. And through William, who is now shifted from being the director of Samaria Mission, he is now our first indigenous missionary to Mozambique and Zimbabwe. So he now spends probably 8 months a year in Mozambique and Zim, going to the Chief Shepherd Bible School and teaches there. So now you're seeing him. So we're investing by saying our guys are now going there to do this. And so William and Sharon, his wife there, and now Simon is the guy on the far, far left, way over here with a striped shirt. That's Simon. And there he is, and he is just a pastor, and now he's training men there. And there's Simon and William together, that the Chief Shepherd Bible School. That's already started. So what I wanted to share with you is that, yes, there's Christ Seminary, and we're growing in how we train men and growing in quality, growing in advancement and all that kind of stuff, but we're also spreading out, and we're now in Zimbabwe that has no currency, gas at $18 a gallon, no food, no jobs, and there's the building that you saw that's there. So there's that's there, right there, in a country that is completely in chaos, but we're training men that's there. Now, with that, I can show you also just to get how it actually started here. Again, that's where we started. That's, again, class in the old room there. They're the guys. So you get an idea of what rural Africa is like. And some of these guys here are our church members. So the white guys that are they're up front, these guys are here. I just want to tell you one small anecdote. You guys see the guy in the white pants and the blue shirt? See him up there? This is an amazing story. Back in 2017, I think it was the 500th year of the anniversary of the Reformation. So the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, Carol and I were able to go to Wittenberg. That's where a guy named Martin Luther stuck a thing called a 95 Thesis on the door of the church in Wittenberg and started what was called the Protestant Reformation. It actually created what's called Protestants, which we are Protestants because we protest the Catholic Church. So you get a little bit of that history. And so it's 500th anniversary of that, of like why we are here. And for that, I wrote an article together with Johan Udendahl, who's one of my contemporaries, one of my peers, lecturing, and we wrote an article on how the Reformation came to South Africa. And it did not come from the top down, as you would think, because the Muslims stopped it at Egypt. From Cairo to a place called Carthage, the Reformation came, and the Coptics were there in Egypt, and they were strong, but a guy named Augustine went over to Carthage, and they had all the theologians. And the problem was that they did not indigenize, meaning they were still Europeans in Carthage. So they ran a European church in Africa. Well, you could see then the Africans weren't real happy about that, so they weren't real loyal to the church. So when the Muslims came, all the people just gave the keys to the church, and they said, here, you take it, because I'm not really part of this. And so the Islamic people shut the door right there at the top of Africa. So the Reformation never came down. The gospel was never available until the Dutch came around trying to get to India, going all the way around, and crash landed in South Africa and started colonizing there. But the Dutch Reformed Church wasn't real gospel-oriented. They became very cold and dead, and so they weren't really growing the church. Plus, they were very separate. They didn't mix with the African people. And so it took what was called the French Huguenots came because of persecution, and the Moravians came, the Germans came, and then a German Baptist came, a guy named Hugo Gucci. And he came and really set evangelism going and started the first Baptists in South Africa. And that was the first real kick that came in. Well, Hugo Gucci actually baptized the great-great-great-grandfather of Johan Udendahl, the guy that I wrote the article with. His great-great-great-grandfather was actually baptized by this guy, Hugo Gucci. So that became a big thing in the article. You know, I was like, hey, baptized our guy right here. And became the first Afrikaner baptized dunk in South Africa, because they're all Reformed, so they're the sprinkle kind of Presbyterian type deal. So with all that, that was a cool article in Wittenberg. Well, I meet this guy with the white pants and the blue shirt about a few months after we went through the Wittenberg thing. And talking to him, and he was one of these guys that you meet, and he's trying to get away as fast as possible, you know, in church. So you're trying to, hey, new guy, hey, let's talk, hey, okay, we're busy, I got to grab the kids, we got to go, and we're here because you guys have the best, like, creche in town, meaning you have the best kids deal, you know, for kids 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Our kids love it, so that's why we come, and I got to get out of here. So you're trying to get with them, you know, and we saw him at a store somewhere, and the same kind of thing, you know. Just, sorry, I don't want. So I said, okay, I kind of know this guy. I've seen the type. So he's not real interested in church, but they're going for some reason, the wife or the kids. And somehow we left or something. But after about 3, 4 months, I noticed he's not back in church, and there's regular. And then I find out through the mission that he's plugged into the mission here, plugged in with the mission guys. And they're coming every week. And they're saying, yeah, this guy, and he's like, I want to sow into the ministry. I want to help and all this kind of stuff. And now he's active and coming in, and he's actually a big businessman in town. Well, he is Russell Gucci, like the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of the guy that we wrote the article about. Happens to live in town, and then just happened through just the Lord's providence coming into the church, and now here he is, and he was like not interested in church for a second, and also now here he is in Zimbabwe helping the Chief Shepherd Bible School as a church member. So you never know what the Lord's doing when people coming in and out of your church. You never know at all what the Lord's doing when you see people and you see that. This is such an unbelievable shock to me. Then it was all related to, you're doing some research on something, you write, all these guys are connected, and now he's going to our men's discipleship program, and all that kind of stuff's going on. And there he is at Chief Shepherd Bible School. I mean, he's not a teacher, but he's there, I'm supporting it, I'm part of it, that kind of thing. And there they are, there's Russell right there, yeah, here's Russell. But all the guys here are in class along with Simon. And so there they are. And so Chief Shepherd Bible School, even in its opening, you can see just how kind of rustic it is. They plant their own food, and it started more this way than a developed building, that kind of thing. And so it started with that church, and now we're training men in a rural area tied to Christ Seminary. So the goal of Christ Seminary is to keep expanding where we can train pastors as they get first educated with us, and then they're pastoring churches. They can continue their education to grow even further, because it's very important that South Africa develop a middle class and develop an educated group of people and move the African population to be able to think and take control. And so we're offering that. We're moving to do that, to be their training institute to be able to help those churches. And we're going to like neighboring Zimbabwe and Mozambique and training the men in their context where they are. They can read, but you get them the right books and you now work with them. You have to spend time with them. That's one-on-one discipleship, and you're going through that, and we're doing that. And so I wanted you to be aware of what's happening through Christ Seminary that's there. It's not just one thing, it's a school we're going. It's like, no. We got plans to advance so that the graduates of Christ Seminary are the ones running the seminary now. And those guys are starting to now visit Cornerstone. And they're becoming the generation that you really want to get connected to directly. It's kind of like more like AC power than running. When you have a missionary, you're running on battery. And when you get the Africans coming directly here, now you're running on AC. You're right there. And so you have the African guys coming right here. And that's what we've got. We've now had over a long investment. Africans are now at the level where they're going to the major schools here and getting to be able to not just preach and teach, but they can write. See, that's the goal. Because Africa needs literature. Africa needs stuff for pastors. Africa needs true Christian leaders who will write for their people from an African perspective. It's wrong to think that they have to learn all the European history first. No. They need to write from an African perspective what the Bible says and be able to communicate to their people. We're getting those guys now to be able to do that. A school that can actually help train those kinds of people. And actually going now into the rural areas and building those guys up as well. So we're going up and we're going out. And all because of involvement of churches that are willing to take the risk of investing in missions that's a little bit, maybe we don't understand it quite so much. And oh yeah, now you want us to have Africans here. We don't know them as well as we do you. And all that. Now, you're taking the risk of saying, no, we see how God works in his kingdom. And it's really moving up in a big way. So that's what's happening here. And it's pretty exciting to see what the Lord is doing. And just wanted to give you a report of what your missions investment is doing in South Africa. And as well, it's going out into Zimbabwe and other places. And it's complicated, it's complex, and there's a lot of conflict with people and races and politics and all that stuff. No different than anywhere else in the world. It's got its own brand. But through that, you're seeing the Lord like a hot knife through butter, just carving out, saying, this is what I'm doing for my people there. So that's what's happening. So I thought maybe I could give just a little bit of time for a few questions. Anything? Yeah. We are fortunate in South Africa in that the language of commerce is English. The question was, how do we deal with the multiple languages? Because in a particular classroom, you'll have 7, 8 major first languages that are there. We are an English-based church, English-based school. English is the common language of commerce. So you do business, government, it's all English. So most people know it, but understand this, they don't think in that language necessarily. And any of you who are in education understand that we're trying to teach, it's what you think in how you process. Meaning the question to ask is, do you dream in English? That's what I always ask, is that when you dream, do you dream in Sepeti or dream in Swana or do you dream in English? And whatever they dream in, that's what they're thinking in. Or another question to ask is, what do you do math in? If you're at a grocery store trying to calculate prices on something, how do you think? Do you do it in a home language or do you do it in English? Because that's going to be how you process. And when that's the case, you realize they're actually thinking in another language, you have to teach knowing that in advance, so you can't just assume they're with you. Because sometimes we use words and they have words, and those words have different meanings when we talk, and concepts as well. Yeah, we've had guys that came from the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. All they could say was hello in English because they spoke 100% French. But graduated magna cum laude with us after 4 years because you walk around with a dictionary and you just word by word and you get there and the Lord fills in and it's amazing what they can do with language. But we had 100% French speakers from Madagascar. Guys could only speak French in Madagascar. Amazing preachers, amazing when they come. But it's all through English, and they will learn English, as it comes. We do that. Now, with the fellowship time, yeah, it's a challenge for us. It's a challenge because you're wanting to encourage mixed fellowship, but people are often more comfortable with their language and their type, and that is that. And you don't want to force people to say, go be where you're uncomfortable all the time. Yeah. So you have to let it breathe a little bit, and so sometimes we have tea and coffee after. We always have tea and coffee after every church service. That you let the Vendas be with the Vendas, the Afrikaners with the Afrikaners, the Swanas with the Swanas, and it just kind of works that way. But it's not like we build a little fence around us. We do that. But sometimes when you have 2 or 3 people and they want to talk, you got to let that breathe. But you encourage fellowship so that when somebody joins, immediately everything switches to the common language so you can go. But that takes a church that loves one another to make that happen. So that's what you teach first, is not so much the language, but you teach how are we as Christians. The language is one of the largest challenges in South Africa. It's a huge political fight right now because universities that used to teach in a particular language medium, the government is now saying you can't do that anymore, now you got to go to English. Well, there's a history. There's a history when a university was set up a certain way, and it's got a history of how it started and all that, and it's got a heritage, and they said, no, take that out, let's go to English. And to give a little bit of history on that, like it was an Afrikaans university, started by Afrikaners, for Afrikaners to do that, and it was done way back in the 1930s, 1920s, when the Afrikaners were under British imperial rule that were imposing English on them. And so now you say, we fought through this, and we have that, and now they're being told, okay, get rid of all the Afrikaans, we're going to English. It creates a bit of a stir. You can see that. So there's lots of opinions on, in the news, so it's not all what's going on here in the States. They've got their own set of issues that they deal with. And language is one of those. One more question. Yes, there are snakes in South Africa. I don't know. Yes, it's very important. That's an excellent question, and I'll just be blunt right up the front. It's real important that students have skin in the game. You don't give something what costs nothing. That's a principle out of 2 Samuel 24. You don't just give to God what doesn't cost anything. And so they pay the equivalent, now it's going to sound off, we probably ought to relook at our pricing structure, but they pay the equivalent of about $350 per year. That's pretty low. They pay 5,000 Rand for the year, 2,500 per semester. In our economy, where the guys are, they can come up with that. A typical university would cost about 15,000 Rand, but that's not including books, not including accommodation. That's just showing up for your classroom. About 15,000 to maybe a little bit more per year will get you that. We give you for 5,000, plus we give you your books, and when you come, we give you the place to stay with the food. So it's a real good deal, and what we're finding is the price point, yeah, it does help some, but it's not like we got a bunch of people that are coming and we're turning them away. Money's not the issue. Money is not the issue. The issue is one of, are churches willing to send their guys, and is there a trust? And I'm glad you asked that, because I'm going to close it with this Bible passage, understanding. Is there a trust of people to teach them the word? Pentecostalism, hyper-charismatic theology is everywhere over there, to where people do the most bizarre things. They take a can of Raid. You know Raid? Okay, they call it Doom over there as the product. So they spray Doom in your face. So the guy's called the prophet of Doom, and he sprays it in your face to say, do you have faith? See, this didn't hurt you. Drink a glass of gasoline. See, it didn't hurt you, you have faith. They're doing that all over the place. All for money and taking money and that kind of thing. So it's all about prosperity. That kind of thing is a big deal. So why would you come to us? Well, those are the guys that don't have the Spirit. Those are the guys, see, they don't have the Spirit like us. So we got that tension that goes in. Now, what are we trying to teach people? We're trying to teach them the Word of God, which goes against their theology completely. So there's that tension that comes in. And there's a great difficulty that I've had to understand that Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. What do you have that you did not first receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as if you didn't? Meaning, we as Americans, I as an American, have to be so cautious coming there that I'm asking people to walk away from their pagan African ways and beliefs and become a biblical person, become a citizen of the king and a citizen of the kingdom. Don't be a citizen of South Africa, be a citizen of the kingdom. Do away with your political persuasions, your things you're fighting for and all this stuff, because we got the king here. And I'm trying to convince them of that. But I can only do that if I've proven to them that I've walked away from my American attractions first. Because it's really easy to speak to them as an American here that's driven up in your car and coming up and all of that. Because one thing they always tell me is, yeah, Dave, I know you're like us, but you have a passport. We don't. So you've always got a way of thinking that you're still an American. And we have to be careful in projecting when we're in missions out there when it's pretty rustic. That kind of the way to heaven is through America. You know, it's through American culture. It's through reading what we read and thinking how we think and be like me and you'll be like Christ. We have to be so cautious because that is a barrier because they see that so quick. And they're like, I'm not going to do that because you haven't done what you're asking me to do. So we have to be cautious to say, you know what, have I really projected that I've got a lot of things to shed in my own biases to show them that we're both on this journey to have a biblical culture? Because that is the fight to do that. Money's not the real issue. The issue is trust. Do they trust us? And what's helping is we've got a lot of students and graduates now out there. They say, I might not have trust, but I trust these guys. I trust the guys that are preaching. I trust the guys that I hear. So I guess based on their recommendation, now I'm coming. That's what it takes. But they have about $400, $350, $400 in the investment. It could be a little bit more. Doesn't have to be. And it's enough for them that it stings them when they reach in the pocket and they pull out. And you can tell, you had to go work for that. Good. Now we're square. And it's about a 97% scholarship they get. So in terms of the real cost, it would be whatever 3% or 4% of $400 would be. So it's quite a bit. So it's probably about $10,000, a little over $10,000 per year is what it costs them to run. So that's what they get. And I think it's very important that you need to understand as missions, when you deal with people out there, it's not helpful to do things so that they get something for free. They need to work for it, for sure. All right? Well, thank you. I know this has been kind of a lot of information coming, but I wanted to just help encourage you this morning. Lord, we thank you for the day and your goodness to us in Cornerstone Church. Just their commitment to the gospel, commitment to living the gospel. Father, as I pray for them, and just their various challenges that they have, that knowing that they rely on your strength. Father, as they minister to this community here in Wichita, but also in missions throughout, and their desire to see the gospel spread. Lord, I thank you for what you're doing in Polokwane, in South Africa, and how your grace is sufficient for all of us. In Christ's name, amen.